deliciously with Ara. Today we're going to cook 부대찌개, or the Korean-styled army stew. So for our ingredients, you have to just bring out all kinds of processed meats, canned meats na meron kayo sa bahay. But of course, I'll just let you first know yung pinaka-crucial na ingredient na hindi natin pwede palitan. The most important ingredient for this, which is gonna be the main flavor of our 부대찌개 or the army stew, is basically our green onions, garlic, and Dwenjang, the Korean soybean paste. Aside from this, others, we can actually change it and change somehow depending on the availability of your pantry. So let's start first making our green onions for the preparation of our pot. Kuha kayo ng isang malaking pot. Better is hindi masyadong malalim. Just get something that's like around a hand thickness, because this is sort of like enjoyed on the table together with hindi siya parang masabaw na pagkain. So I have here one pot. And let's just cut our green onions. I have here around 1 whole green onions. But of course, in Korean food, siguro na realize din you have already seen a lot of commonalities na the more green onions, it doesn't really matter. The more, the better somehow. So just cut it into like around 2 inches in length. And then ikalat natin sa ating pot. Just drop it on the bottom. And here I have 1 piece of white onions. Cut your onions onto strips. And then, ikalat din natin sa ating ibabaw ng ating pot. So after spreading out the basic ingredients on the bottom of your pot, now this is the time na mag-chop tayo na lahat ng mga canned meats and processed meats that we have. I have here a can of a luncheon meat. You can use any brand, whatever you have in the house. So there are so many restaurants that serves 부대찌개, and mostly people would prefer that the more assorted types of hams you have, parang mas nasasarapan sila because they feel like all the flavors are blended. However, if you just have like one kind of a luncheon meat, there's a trick na pwede niyong gawin para mukha siya ng marami kayong nilagay na different klase pero isa lang. What you do is maghiwa tayo ng iba't ibang slices. So like this, I have whole can of luncheon meat. Ang kalahati, ikakat ko siya ng talaga parang traditional na luncheon meat cuts that we normally do. Yung pa-square. And the other half, what I'll do is, ikakat ko siya ng parang pa-strips. Para when people come and see, alam nila na parang, wow, iba-iba palang hamang nilalagay nila. Because as I mentioned earlier, di ba the history of budae is really lahat ng klase ng mga natitirang mga processed meats na nakukuha ng mga Koreans back then from the army ang pinagsama-sama. So parang the more assorted there are, parang it looks more abundant. So this one, gawin ko siya parang pa-strips. And another trick that you can do is actually, meron akong natirang parang 1/4 ng aking luncheon meat. For this one, it's also good that we have ground pork, giniling. But in case you don't have giniling sa house, what I sometimes do is, instead of gagamit ako ng giniling, ang isang konting part ng luncheon meat, parang minomosh ko siya na parang magiging siya yung giniling itself. So as you can see, in one can of my luncheon meat, I made it 3 different cuts. But of course, it's really up to you. So I have here na parang traditional na square, parang pahaba ng strips. And kung wala kayong giniling, but sometimes actually, this tastes better. Parang mas marami siyang parang, the processed meat na lasa. So malasa talaga siya if we use the 1/4 of our canned, parang ginawa ko siyang giniling. So it's actually an option. So pinapakita ko lang sa inyo kasi hindi naman always you have giniling in the house. So either way, we're gonna add in here because I told you, the more meat, the merrier ang ating stew. So now we have our hams. We're gonna put it on our pot. And yung ating na-mosh na ating ham, ilalagay ko siya sa isang side. And if ever na meron kayo giniling and you opted na gusto nyo mag-add ng giniling, pork giniling, around 1 tablespoon is enough. Parang very generous na 1 tablespoon, ilalagay ko siya sa here. As you can see, parang, it would blend mamaya. So this is actually an optional. But of course, if you have, not bad to add. So any kinds of sausage you have in the house is good to use. Beef sausage, Frankfurter's, Vienna, or even chicken sausage is good. Whatever you have, don't worry about it. The amount is really up to you. Kung gusto nyo talaga na ham galore, sausage galore, go ahead. Actually, they would love it more. But the way I actually divide or the way how I assign the servings is per person, I assign around 1. And as you can see, we have here around a good for 3 to 4 servings. And dahil malaki na yung ginamit kong luncheon meat, I would just use 3 pieces of sausages for now. So let's just cut them in strips. And now we're gonna add 1/2 of a firm tofu. You know, the good thing about budae-jjigae is that wala talaga siyang uniform na cuts ang kailangan ng lahat ng ingredients, because the way it really was, the more diverse shapes, the more diverse designs and sizes it has, that's the way how we were supposed to eat it. If you wanted everything in uniform sizes, but as you can see, ginawa ko siya medyo maliliit na squares. So after nilagay na natin yung mga luncheon meat, our sausages, tofu, and our ground pork, and if you don't have ground pork, again, pwede naman yung i-mash yung luncheon meat na lang, so it's really not a required ingredient after all. Another optional ingredient that you can use is actually bacon. For bacon and hams, it's not really recommended na marami ang gagamitin natin, but we can just add very konti, around 1 to 2 strips only, just to add a little bit of a layer of different kinds of meat. But if we add more, magiging medyo parang ma-overpower ng bacon ang buong flavor of the stew. So here, I only have around 2 strips of bacon. So from now on, I will introduce you how to make basically the taste of our budae-jjigae, yung pinaka-important na ingredient. Of course, for all Korean food, mostly we love our garlic, our minced garlic. So we're gonna add 1 very generous tablespoon of our minced garlic. Dahil medyo mahaba yung aking spoon, so this is around 1 tablespoon. So after our garlic, we're gonna add Dwenjang or the soybean paste. You cannot replace this with miso. Iba kasi ang flavor of miso, medyo matamis version ng parang soybean na medyo matamis, and this one is really fermented. It's more on the heavier and more of the salty side. So this one, kailangan talaga Korean soybean paste or Dwenjang. This is around 1/2 tablespoon only. And for gochujang or chili paste, the Korean chili paste, also 1/2. And our chili powder, this is the Korean chili powder, around 2 tablespoons. You can adjust the level of spiciness. If you really want it like more spicier, you can add siguro mga 1/2 tablespoon more. But for a pot like this, na around 4 servings na ginagawa natin, 2 tablespoons would be good. So 1/2 ng Korean chili paste and Dwenjang, 1 of the garlic, and 2 of our chili powder. And to really boost up the flavor and to make it all blend, we can add sugar. So it can be white sugar or brown sugar like what I have, or washed sugar. Mga 1/3 tablespoons lang. Parang konti lang. So this is around mga 1/3. And this is soy sauce, yung regular toyo that you can just get from any groceries. We're gonna add 1/2 tablespoon. And I'm gonna mix this up with 1 tablespoon of patis. In Korea, we have actually different types of soy sauce. We have the soy sauce na palagay pang stew na medyo maalat version. But here in Philippines, diba, we only have the soy sauce na parang isang mostly just same ang level ng kanilang mga saltiness. So instead of using just 2 tablespoons of toyo, I would recommend 1/2 soy sauce, toyo, and then 1 patis will make the flavor a little richer and deeper. And optional ingredient again is macaroni. As you see, macaroni was never in the Korean grocery or Korean staple before. But diba, it was like from the mga tira-tirang pagkain ng mga ingredients na galing from the army. So siguro nakakuha sila ng mga like macaroni or pasta. So here we're gonna use around 1 to 2 tablespoons depending on your preference of macaroni. Just raw macaroni, dried macaroni would be okay. So this is roughly around 2 tablespoons. And here's the catch. Akala ng marami pag Korean army stew or budae-jjigae that kimchi is the main ingredient, but actually it's not. Kimchi is like parang accessories lang. If you have soured kimchi, yung mga kimchi na sobrang na-ferment na, yung nabili niyo matagal and then nakalagay sa ref na naging super maasim na, that is the kind of kimchi we wanna use for our budae-jjigae. But if wala kayong kimchi, it's okay. You don't really have to use kimchi at all. But if you really wanna add a little bit of a boost of the Korean touch, you can add kimchi, mga 1/3 cup lang. So very konti lang actually, right? And for the kimchi, like in my previous videos, I've always suggested it's better to use a tongue and a scissors para hindi mag-stain ang ating chopping board. So after we've added our kimchi, we're gonna be needing our baked beans, the pork and beans that you can get from the regular supermarkets. Kung wala kayo makakuha na baked beans, you can just use a regular tomato ketchup. We're gonna need around 1.5 tablespoons of each. So So this is a regular pork and beans that I got from the supermarket. I'm just gonna get like a very generous mga 1.5 tablespoons. If you don't like beans, you can actually replace it with 1.5 tablespoons of our tomato ketchup that you have at home. And we're gonna do a little touch of pepper. Siguro mga 2 to 3. And now we're gonna add water, around 3 table cups of water. If you really want the exact measurement, around 650 milliliters is best. But of course, the amount of stew that you want, the amount of water that you want for the stew can be really adjusted based on your taste and your preference. So gumagamit ako here ng parang regular drinking cup that we have in the house. So medyo nagbabat na yung mga ingredients natin. We're gonna do our first boil. So after nagkulo na yung first boil, we're gonna add our ramyeon sari. This is basically parang Korean noodles na wala siyang yung parang packets of flavoring. That's really fitted for like stews like this. So parang Korean noodles lang siya. Parang instant noodles na noodles lang. So we're gonna add it on the center. And for 부대찌개, it's really good to have some cheese. So like a sliced cheese, any brands would do. Like 1 piece of it is good. It's either you can add now together with your ramen sari, the noodles, or siguro pwede kayo mag-add mamaya. But I'm just to show you the difference of it, I'm just gonna add 1. And before the serving, we're gonna add also another 1. Of course, diba, the more cheese, the merrier. People love it, right? So kung gusto talaga nyo ng cheesy, why not add 1 or more? I'm just gonna add isa. It's very fast to cook lang naman kasi diba the sari or the ramyeon, the noodles that we added, siguro mga 3 to 4 minutes is already good to serve. Tada! So here's 부대찌개 or the Korean-styled army stew. I'm sure the whole family will enjoy. It's not very spicy, but it has like the sort of the Korean touch, the best representative Korean menu when it comes to parang East meets West kind of dish. So I hope you enjoy my recipe. Very easy to follow. And see you again next time. Bye! So the 부대찌개, this best eaten when we cook this on the table. Parang it has the hot pot on the center, and then kanya-kanya tayo kuha with your family and friends. One of the best meal to enjoy as a salo-salo with, just fun to get noodles, hams, and the stew. It's great for all kinds of weather. And of course, you love it because diba, most of us, we love the kinds of meats, ham. This is parang guilt-free na kind of food that we can have. The time I can have the feast of all my luncheon, all my instant meats. I'm sure you enjoy my recipe again. Bye!